HNoMS Nordkapp was the lead ship of the Nordkapp class of fishery protection vessels. She was launched the 18th of August 1937 at Horten naval shipyard, with yard number 123. She had one sister ship, HNoMS Senja.Nordkapp was named after the North Cape in Finnmark. As was typical of her class, Nordkapp was very unstable in rough seas and was viewed from the beginning as a second-rate vessel. Nordkapp sailed throughout the Second World War and saw service in several theaters. Nordkapp in the Norwegian campaign. When the Germans invaded Norway on the 9th of April 1940, Nordkapp was stationed in northern Norway, belonging to the Royal Norwegian Navy's 3rd Naval District and commanded by Lieutenant Commander John Sipe. During the Norwegian campaign, Nordkapp saw the first actions of her career, sinking Kattegat. Background: in the evening of the 9th of April, Nordkapp intercepted the 6,031-ton German tanker Kattegat of Bremen in the Glomfjorden south of Narvik. Kattegat was one of two naval tankers the Germans intended to use in order to quickly refuel the 10 destroyers of the Narvik Task Force, enabling them to escape back to Germany before the Royal Navy could trap and sink them. In preparation of her supply mission, Kattegat had departed the pilot station at Kopervik in western Norway on the 6th of April, scheduled to arrive at Narvik on the 9th of April. The Kriegsmarine support tanker had sailed to Norway from Wilhelmshaven on the German North Sea coast on the 3rd of April in preparation for the invasion, while the other tanker, the 11,766-ton whale oil factory ship Jan Wellem, had reached Narvik from the German bases Nord at the Bolshaya-Zapadnaya inlet on the Kola Peninsula in Russia before the German attack. The captain of Kattegat had been warned of a British naval minefield in the Vestfjorden and refused to continue, choosing instead to anchor up in Sandlagbukta, Nevadal at Orms in Meloy. Hailing after closing to a cable length of Kattegat, Lieutenant Commander Sipe hailed the German tanker, demanding that it identified itself. In response, the German captain signaled that Vidkun Quisling had been made the new Prime Minister of Norway and that all Norwegian naval vessels were under orders to cooperate with the German Kriegsmarine. Sipe would receive no information from Kattegat before he himself had given his name and rank. While this signal exchange was going on, Kattegat dispatched radio messages asking for Kriegsmarine assistance and escorting the remainder of the way to Narvik. Before he confronted the German ship, Nordkapp's commander had been instructed by the 3 Naval District to take her as a prize, but after speaking with 2 Norwegian pilots who had guided the German tanker a short time earlier, he decided that this would be too hazardous an undertaking, as the pilots who had entered Nordkapp during the patrol boat's signal exchange with Kattegat reported that the tanker's 39-man crew were all armed and wearing naval uniforms. Sipe considered it impossible to board and seize the ship, since his own 22-man crew had a total of only 4 rifles amongst them. He assessed that to control the large German crew all the way into the port of Bodo while being outnumbered and probably outgunned would have been too difficult. Sinking. In response to the aggressive signals received from Kattegat, Sipe signaled back a short message telling the German crew to abandon ship within 10 minutes or face the consequences. At the end of the 10 minutes, no reaction from the German crew had been observed and Nordkapp fired a warning shot. As still no reaction could be seen in the protruding darkness, 4 47mm rounds were fired into Kattegat Kattegat's waterline, is the Germans had opened the ship's valves while leaving the tanker. Kattegat sank quickly. 34 of the crew were brought on board Nordkapp as POWs from a nearby wharf, while the remaining 5 managed to escape into the hills after the ship was sunk. The 34 POWs from the German tanker were brought to Mossjone and handed over to military authorities there. Consequences and aftermath. The effect of removing Kattegat from the Germans' supply chain was devastating. The German destroyers at Narvik could only be refueled 2 at a time, instead of the planned 4 at a time. Also, Jan Wellem did not hold enough fuel for all 10 of the German destroyers. Consequently, the German warships at Narvik failed to make their escape in time and were destroyed by the Royal Navy in the battles of Narvik. As the 5-destroyer-strong 2nd Destroyer Flotilla under Commodore Bernard Warburton Lee entered the Ofot Fjord on the 10th of April to initiate the First Battle of Narvik, Vice Admiral William Whitworth, in charge of the Royal Navy forces in the Narvik area, received a message from Norway stating that Kattegat had been intercepted and sunk 3 nautical miles offshore. Kattegat was later salvaged by the Norwegian military, with 1,400 tons of diesel and 207 barrels of grease unloaded at Svolvær. On the 15th of May, before Kattegat was ready to sail to Tromsø, she was bombed and damaged by a German aircraft. As the damaged ship still held 5,000 tons of oil, the local fishing boat fleet helped themselves to the cargo until the Germans arrived to retake the ship after the capitulation of mainland Norway. In June, the short time Kattegat was in Norwegian hands, she served under the name Mount Bodo, guard and escort duties. The next task for Nordkapp after she had dealt with Kattegat came on the 13th of April when she was ordered to go to Brønnøysund. A German Heinkel He-115 seaplane had landed there after running out of fuel and been seized by the local police, who had taken the 4 German airmen into custody. The aircraft was captured intact with a full bomb load and was later flown to Tromsø by Royal Norwegian Navy Air Service Lieutenants Iversen and pressed into Norwegian service. From 16 to the 22nd of April, Nordkapp was deployed with a Royal Navy squadron of 14 warships and 2 troop ships that had arrived at Sjønarfjord north of Sandnessjøen. As the force split up and some of the destroyers sailed south, Nordkapp followed the main force north. During the time she followed the British vessels, the force was subjected to several German air attacks without the Norwegian ships suffering any damage. Patrol and bombardment missions. After leaving the British task force, Nordkapp spent most of her time until late May patrolling and guarding a British minefield in the Andfjord in northern Nordland, southern Troms. At the 24th of May she called at Bodo, and by the 30th of May the evacuation of 4,000 British Army troops from the Bodo region began. By that time Bodo had been heavily bombed by the Luftwaffe over several days, and German troops was observed advancing towards Rosvik northeast of Bodo. On the 3rd of June, Nordkapp was dispatched together with the 463-ton British-operated Q-ship Rannan to the Leifjord to try to stop the advance of the enemy. By sea, the 2 ships bombarded German forces in the area before splitting up and heading north. Nordkapp sailing to Svolvær. Friendly fire incident and evacuation. On the 7th of June 1940, Nordkapp arrived at Svolvær and received the order that had been given by the Norwegian High Command to evacuate all operational naval vessels to Allied ports. While most of the 13 Navy ships that escaped the capitulation of mainland Norway started their journeys that day, Nordkapp remained until the early hours of the next day in order to give refugees and volunteers more time to gather for the voyage to the United Kingdom. According to Lieutenant Commander Sipes' orders, his ship's first destination abroad was to be the Faroe Islands. In the evening evening of the 7th of June, German aircraft bombed and destroyed an oil tank facility in the town. At around 0200 hours before Nordkapp was ready to sail west and start 5 years of service in exile, 2 ships arrived at Svolvær and started destroying the remaining oil tanks with artillery fire. Assuming the ships to be German, the second in command of Nordkapp, Ensign Anderson, who was in command of the ship as Lieutenant Commander Saipi was in a conference on land at the time, sailed out and attacked the 2 unknown ships. As he opened up on the 2 ships with his single cannon, they quickly returned fire and a 45-minute artillery duel ensued. Neither side managed to hit their adversary during the fight, and eventually the 2 sides discovered each other's true identity. The ships Nordkapp had been battling for 3/4 of an hour were Rannon and the 655-ton Royal Navy ASW trawler Northern Gem. Rannon had been bombarding German positions together with Nordkapp just 4 days previously. After the nearly fatal friendly fire incident, Nordkapp returned to Svolvær and took on board volunteers before leaving port at 0300 hours on the 8th of June. The passengers included 19 Royal Norwegian Navy personnel, many of whom were crew members of vessels sunk in the preceding 2 months. On the 9th of June, Nordkapp joined the British evacuation convoy. During the journey west, the ships were attacked by German bombers but avoided suffering any damage. After 4 days at sea, Nordkapp reached Tórshavn on the Faroe Islands on the 12th of June, resupplying before continuing on to the United Kingdom. Service abroad: Iceland and the Shetland bus. After arrival at Rosyth in Scotland on the 18th of June 1940, Nordkapp was rebuilt and rearmed and was declared operational on the 14th of September 1940. She was posted to Iceland from the 21st of September 1940. On Iceland, she served as a patrol vessel until the 9th of September 1943, when she was transferred to Shetland in order to support the Shetland bus operations. At Shetland, she operated from the 22nd of September 1943 together with the RNO and patrol vessels Horten, Molde, Narvik and Riser. Operation Neptune and Scarpa flow between D-Day and the 18th of June 1944. Nordkapp took part in Operation Neptune, the naval part of the invasion of Normandy. On the 6th of June, she escorted a convoy of transports from Southend-on-Sea in the east of England to the British invasion beaches and thereafter escorted ships along the coast of Normandy. The main threat from which she protected Allied shipping was that of German E-boat and U-boat attacks. On the 11th of September 1944, she sailed from Portland to Aberdeen for maintenance and stayed there until the 15th of December 1944, when she was again transferred, this time to guard duties at the Home Fleet's main base at Scarpa Flow, a role she would continue until the 1st of January 1945. Thereafter she moved to Lerwick, Shetland, where she was based until VE Day. Returned to Norway on the 18th of May 1945, 10 days after the final German surrender in Norway. Nordkapp left her exile in Methil in the United Kingdom and sailed for home. 2 days later, on the 20th of May, she arrived at her new base at the southwestern port of Stavanger, ending almost 5 years of exile. Post-war, after the end of the Second World War, Nordkapp resumed her pre-war duties as a Coast Guard vessel until being decommissioned and laid up in Horten. On the 29th of July 1954, she was sold off to civilian ownership in 1956, finding a new career as a fishing vessel under 2 owners, first as Skarod and then from 1971 as Torhugo. Her long career ended on the 27th of November 1972 when she sank off West Africa after suffering leaks and disastrous hull failure. Bibliography: Abelson, Frank. Norwegian naval ships 1939 to 1945. Oslo, Semenamp, Stenison as. ISBN 82-7046-0508. Berg, Ole F. Ishaugarden-og-Parhavet, Marinens-Krig 8. April 1942 8. May 1945. Oslo, Marinens-Krigs Veteranforening. ISBN 82-9935452-8. Sivertsen, Sven Karl, Jägeren Sleipner i Romsdalsfjordsjø Forsvarsdistrikt April 1940. Håndvag, Sjø Militær Samfund ved Norsk Tidsskrift for Civisen. Sivertsen, Sven Karl, Medkongen til Fornjetkamp, Oppbyggingen av marinen under den andre verdenskrig. Håndvag, Sjø Militær Samfund ved Norsk Tidsskrift for Civisen. ISBN 82-994738888. Sivertsen, Sven Karl, Sjø Forsvaret dag for dag 1814-2000. Håndvag, Sjø Militær Samfund ved Norsk Tidsskrift for Civisen. ISBN 82-9221703-7. Thomassen, Marius. 90 underrent Norsk Orlogs flag, Bergen Eid Forlag, ISBN 82-514-0483-5. Waj, Johan, HNoMS Nordkapp, Oslo, Dryas Forlag.